Welcome back, everyone. We're glad to have you today in our series on STEM careers. So for today's lesson, we'll be focusing on plant and soil ecologists. And before we dive in, I'd like to point out that we've included an article that's linked here on the introductory slide for your convenience so that you can learn more about what exactly is involved in the career of a plant and soil ecologist and what it takes to become one. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. What is a plant and soil ecologist? One of the greatest challenges of our current world is the fact that we have an ever-increasing population and ever-decreasing amount of land with which to feed them with. So this is one of the primary goals of plant ecologists. Their focus on how to provide for the food that humans must consume in order to survive, and addressing that disparity between available resources and an ever-increasing population. Plant ecologists are specialized biologists who study the way that plants interact with their surroundings. This job mixes botany, ecology, physical science, math, technology, and has a little human influence thrown into the mix. The goal of the plant scientist is to help producers of feed, food, and fiber crops to conserve natural resources and feed a growing population. Plant scientists can increase fruit crop yields by researching plant diseases. They can help feed the world by genetically engineering drought-tolerant crops. They can develop new agricultural techniques to grow food on board the space stations on the International Space Station. Or another thing they could do is even genetically engineer a new exotic rose variety. There is a vast variety of jobs in which plant ecologists work. So if you're someone who would enjoy the prospect of working anywhere from Hawaii's tropical forests or even Africa's Sahara Desert, or simply just your community backyard, and if you are the outdoorsy type with the little green thumb, then this just might be the profession for you. Soil ecologists are very similar. They can study the physical and chemical properties of the soil, the distribution, origin, history of soils, and work very closely with farmers, advising them on crop and soil-related problems. They are primarily dealing with the soil ecology, which is the study of how soil organisms interact with other organisms and their environment. In particular, their influence on and response to numerous soil processes and properties that form the basis for delivering essential ecosystem services. Some of the key processes that ecologists study in soil are nutrient cycling, soil aggregate formation, and biodiversity interactions. Let's take a look at the history of plant and soil ecology. The roots of plant and soil ecology can be traced back to as early as 400 to 250 BC, during the time of Plato and Theophrastus. Plato, a philosopher, actually recognized erosion during his time. He was quoted to have said, "Our land, compared with what it was, is like a skeleton of a body wasted by disease. The plump, soft parts have vanished, and all that remains is the bare carcass." By making this observation, Plato noticed that the land that we have is not infinite and that its nourishment is required in order to produce the food that we grow from it. Theophrastus, who is actually considered the father of botany, determined that some plants were found in certain regions and not in others. This observation would become the foundation for plant geography. Plant geography took on a central role during the 18th and 19th centuries, during the Age of Exploration. Plant geographers played an important role during this time when they observed patterns of plant species, distributions over elevation, and climatic gradients. Alexander von Humboldt was one of the most famous plant geographers. Born in the late 1700s in Prussia, he explored the Orinoco and Amazon rivers of South America. He climbed Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador and brought back 60,000 plant specimens. By doing so, he was able to collect his findings and publish them within his book called Plant Geography in 1807. Later, Baron von Humboldt and Charles Darwin would become of importance. Baron von Humboldt noticed that vegetation zones could be attributed to different factors, including temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and electrical charge. He actually visited President Thomas Jefferson in 1804 and encouraged the Lewis and Clark expedition. His work was an inspiration for Charles Darwin, who wasn't just a zoologist, but actually wrote about adaptation and natural selection, both of which are fundamental concepts of ecology. Later in the 1890s, plant ecology came to be a forefront of the field. Phytogeography would become plant ecology. Eugenius Warming wrote the first book on ecology called The Ecology of Plants, which was widely translated from Danish. He is credited to have taught the world's first ecology course at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark in the mid-1890s. He emphasized the importance of soils, moisture, and temperature, and introduced terms like haplophytes, hydrophytes, xerophytes, and mesophytes. Later, in 1953, Eugene P. Odum, who would become the father of modern ecology, popularized the word ecosystem by making it the organizing concept in his 1953 Fundamentals of Ecology. Afterwards, in the 1960s, and after World War II, newly implemented technologies including pesticides and fertilizers, as well as new breeds of high-yielding crops, greatly increased global food production. This basic approach was the development of high-yielding varieties of cereal grains, expansion of irrigation infrastructure, modernization of management techniques, distribution of hybridized seeds, synthetic fertilizers, and pesticides to farmers. The leader of the Green Revolution was Norman Borlaug, who then received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work. And he's credited to be the father of the Green Revolution and saved over 1 billion lives from his work. There are many skills that a plant or soil ecologist can use in their daily practice, and these skills are very often commonly found across all the different STEM careers. But the ones that we've picked out today are integral to their practice and are among the most important that a plant or soil ecologist can have in their toolbox. These are observation, critical reasoning, time management or organizational skills, and teamwork. Plant and soil ecologists need to be able to analyze and determine the various characteristics of many plants and soils. Having strong observational skills allows them to distinguish and differentiate based on the minutiae of differences in these different varieties of plants and soils. With critical reasoning, both ecologists can investigate the response of soils or plants to different management practices, and then evaluate which practices can actually increase their plant or soil productivity. Time management, organizational skills. Both careers can involve planning and supervising land conservation and reclamation programs, or waste management programs for composting and farming. This would require highly tuned time management and organizational skills. Teamwork. Much of the field work involves consulting with other professionals such as engineers or technical personnel, and therefore the ability to work effectively in a team setting is vital. There are several famous plant and soil ecologists, and for the sake of today's lesson, we'll be focusing on these 4 who are among the most famous. Norman Borlaug is actually someone we discussed a little earlier in the history section. He is credited as the father of the Green Revolution. During the 1960s, Borlaug advanced the use of fertilizers and pesticides worldwide, and due to his efforts, he was able to save over 1 billion people from starvation. For that, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He's quoted to have said, "Food is the moral right of all who are born into this world." Dr. Wangari Maathai is almost single-handedly responsible for bringing back trees to the Kenyan landscape, and for that she's credited for the Green Belt movement. In the 1970s, Maathai founded the Green Belt movement, encouraging Kenyans to replant trees that had been cut down for food, farm use, or plantations. Through her work planting trees, she also became an advocate for women's rights, prison reform, and projects to combat poverty. In 2004, Maathai became the first African woman and the first environmentalist to win the Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts to protect the environment. Rachel Carson was an ecologist before the word was even defined. In the 1960s, she wrote the book on environmental protection. Carson's book, Silent Spring, brought national attention to the issue of pesticide contamination and the effect it was having on the planet. It spurred an environmental movement that led to pesticide use policies and better protection for many animal species that have been affected by their use. Silent Spring is now considered required reading for the modern environmental movement. Dr. Vandana Shiva is another famous plant and soil ecologist who is probably best known as a critic of the Asia's Green Revolution, an international effort that we referenced earlier in the 1960s that wanted to increase food production in less developed countries. This was done through higher yielding seed stocks and the increased use of pesticides and fertilizers. Dr. Shiva maintains, however, that this has led to pollution and a loss of indigenous seed diversity and traditional agricultural knowledge, and the troubling dependence of poor farmers on costly chemicals. Because of this, she has been able to instead promote the use of indigenous seed species and increases the heterogeneous variety of seed species available throughout India to preserve the country's agricultural heritage while training farmers in sustainable agricultural practices. Now let's move on to discuss a day in the life of a plant or soil ecologist. Some soil and plant scientists focus on teaching or fieldwork, while others enter either theoretical or, most commonly, applied research, as there is still much that scientists do not know about the Earth's biomass and its application towards human life and health. This means that responsibilities vary significantly from job to job. But this list that we've includes most job duties found within a typical plant or soil scientist's scope of work. This can include reviewing literature, research, and fieldwork samples to stay current in their field. They can also conduct research into using plants as biofuels. They can develop new methods for controlling crop diseases or eliminating pest species. They may also use computer models to forecast biomass changes and then evaluate how to manage those changes. They can evaluate the effect of environmental and land use on plant and soil mass. They can respond to ecological catastrophes like floods, droughts, fires, and superstorms. They may evaluate different methods for plant and soil remediation. They may monitor and improve soil, air, and water quality, and they may also conduct or contribute to climate impact studies. And although this is the list of daily tasks that we have curated, this is not all-inclusive, and plant and soil ecologists actually perform a variety of tasks that can't all be included on this. So instead, we'll go ahead and let you watch a day in the life of a plant scientist video.
Hi, so my name's Kelsey. I'm a plant scientist and I study what makes plants flower at certain times of the year. So I look at the DNA inside of a cell of a plant. So I'm looking at what genes are turned on in response to different day lengths. So how a plant is measuring the day, what season it is, whether it's cold or warm, to decide when to flower in spring. So basically we want to figure out how to make plants flower more regularly, so we get more flowers, which will make more seeds, and we study legumes, so things like peas and beans, and we want to be able to produce more food. So basically if we can make more flowers, we'll get more peas and beans and more food. The thing I like most about my work is that I'm able to learn more and more every day about how plants work. And also knowing that there's a direct application to the research to be able to produce more food for the world. So something I particularly like about plant science is you don't need to have a lab in a glass house to be able to do it. You can do it at home. If you have a veggie garden or even some plant pots, you can be growing plants at home and doing your own little experiments. So I think that's really fun for people to do.
Now let's discuss some career quick facts for plant and soil ecologists. Plant and soil ecologists earn an average salary of $70,630 annually. They can work in a variety of fields in the private sector or in the public sector. That can include research, or it can include education in universities. It could even include consultation for private businesses or farms, or it could mean working with the public government to ensure the conservation of land. A third of plant ecologists work for the federal government in roles such as the National Park Service, which supports the park rangers, or in research roles with the Environmental Protection Agency, or NASA. A quarter work in state government with state parks and conservation bodies, while 17% work for the local government, and 10% work for advocacy organizations. For NASA, for example, they may research attributes of plants to understand their viability for colonizing other planets. Otherwise, their role is conservation of and on public land. In recent years, as a fun fact, soil and plant scientists have had a very important role in determining the causes of bee diseases. Bees are crucial to the agricultural system, and with the rapid decline in bee activity, soil and plant scientists were called in to solve the mystery of their demise and to once again increase the production of pollen. Now that we've learned a little bit about what the daily life is of a plant and soil ecologist and what their work involves, let's take a look at what exactly the educational requirements are to become a plant or soil ecologist. To begin with, a Bachelor of Science is the required minimum level of education for this profession. Some of the majors that you can take in college include agriculture, agroecology and sustainable agriculture, viticulture and enology, plant sciences, or agronomy and crop science. Typically, a PhD is required for college teaching and senior research professions. And optionally, you can also acquire certifications with the American Science of Agronomy. Although having an associate's degree is sufficient to obtain work in the field or in a laboratory setting at an entry-level position, a bachelor's degree in plant ecology is required to work as an educator or just in the field. Privately owned companies in particular regularly require plant ecologists and soil ecologists to have a master's degree. These types of jobs include consulting and environmental planning. Some of the schools that you can go to acquire a plant or soil ecology bachelor's of science related degree include Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Prairie View A&M University. So now we've learned a little bit about what a plant and soil ecologist is and what are the educational steps it takes to become one. There is some confusion oftentimes between a plant and soil ecologist or a geologist and what that difference might include. So to clarify, we've included a slide that lists some quick career facts on what a geologist is and how to become one. Geologists study earth processes such as earthquakes, landslides, floods, and volcanic eruptions to survey land and draw up safe building plans. When geologists investigate earth materials, they not only investigate metals and minerals, but also look for oil, natural gas, water, and methods to extract those materials. Overall, geology is concerned with the changes of the earth over time, such as climate change and land formation. Some of the specific careers within geology include environmental geologists, engineering geologists, marine geologists, planetary, economic, or petroleum geologists, and also geomorphologists, geophysicists, geohydrologists, and paleontologists. Their median salary is $89,700 across all of these different sectors. About 1 out of every 6 geologists works in engineering services. Another 1 in 7 will work in technical and advisory services, and 1 in 12 work in government facilities, while another 7% will work in higher education as university lecturers or research staff. Their job demand is actually expected to grow within the years of 2014 and 2024 at a rate of about 10%. Surprisingly, the highest demand for this job is located within the state of Texas, and that is due to the fact that Texas has the largest number of oil and gas businesses within its borders. In order to become a geologist, the educational requirements include a Bachelor's of Science in Geology or another related field of study, and then a master's degree or doctorate degrees in various other areas of specialization, including paleontology, mineralogy, volcanology, or hydrology. So if geologist or the field of geology is something that you would be interested in, be sure to also consider this career and learn more about it by looking online. Finally, we'll be rounding out this lesson on plant and soil ecology with an activity. Today's activity is called Plant Finder. One of the most exciting parts of a plant and soil ecologist's job is getting out to explore. So in this activity, you'll be acting as a plant ecologist to identify your local fauna and flora. The only materials that this Plant Finder exercise will require are a stable internet connection, and optionally, you can use your smartphone for assistance as well. First, you will need to visit the following website. On this webpage, you will learn about the plant and soil ecology of the prairies and lakes region of North and Central Texas. This is the region in which Dallas is located. After reading and learning about this region, you will go outside of your house to find and identify 5 plants in your surrounding area. To help you identify these plants, you can download the iNaturalist app. This was created by the California Academy of Sciences in collaboration with National Geographic to help you identify the plants that you find. If you don't want to download this app, you can also just use the Google search option to identify various characteristics of the plants that you see in your area and then identify them. After you've identified your 5 plants, ask yourself, are any of the plants you found also listed on the Prairies and Lakes webpage? Are the plants you discovered native species? Discuss your findings. Thank you for joining us for today's lesson on plant and soil ecologists, with a brief introduction as well to the career of geology. We hope you enjoyed this lesson, and we will see you next time.